Some people say that he did it just to kill himself. Other people believe that he did it just to find out if he was really alive to begin with. Welcome back to episode 27 of Super Mystery Bros, the podcast where we take a select mystery and treat it like we caught it breaking into our house. My name's Nate, and with me again is just Davis. Davis, say hi, man.
Greetings.
So both Kyle and Ivan were unavailable this weekend, so we decided to keep the show going by picking a slightly different topic to talk about this time around. It's one that neither of them would particularly care for, so I consider this one to be sort of a free space on a bingo card, if that makes sense, where I can sort of just lounge around in my underwear and have a heart-to-heart fireside chat with you all, kind of in an intimate one-on-one kind of environment. This one's not a straightforward mystery that we would normally cover, but there are a lot of unanswered questions that surround it. Davis, do you have anything that you want to say? He's shaking his head no. Man of few words. I do have an announcement, though. If you didn't bother listening to that short little announcement episode that I published last week, after this episode, the show is going to be on hiatus until probably late February. So I'm heading to Thailand for about a month, and Ivan might join me while I'm down there at some point. So if that happens, we're going to try to record an episode together. It's probably not going to be a great sound quality because we're going to have to use these really shitty lavalier microphones that I bought for $30, but it's just going to be for one episode anyway. Having no co-host on this episode has kind of fucked up the flow of the show, so I'm just going to remind you once again, please subscribe and review to our show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We put a lot of work into these episodes, and we don't get a lot of love, so please make sure you do that for us. We don't have a Patreon or a Buy Me a Coffee or any of that shit, or an OnlyFans yet. So rating and reviewing our show is going to be about the best way to support us, or just tell a friend that you think would like our show. That's pretty much it, man. Follow us on Instagram at Super Mystery Bros, or you can email us at supermysterybrospodcast@gmail.com if you want to reach out for any reason. So with all that out of the way, let's get it started. Millennials. They've been called the wimp low of generations because they've been purposely trained wrong as a joke. Some would call them the scum of the earth. No good, lazy bums who have no idea how good they've got it because they've got smartphones. Some pin the blame on them because they've been unable to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, buy a house, and start a family by age 23. Others blame their boomer-ass parents for creating these monsters by failing to prepare them for the real world and then squandering that which their parents left for them instead of passing something on to their children. But no matter who you blame for the sorry state of the under 40s of today's world, one thing is for certain. Life just didn't work out the way they were promised it would. Want a job doing something an 8th grader could learn how to do? That's going to be a minimum of 10 years experience and master's degree preferred. Want to buy a home? Tough luck, pal. Affordable housing prices are a threat to the older generation's retirement plans and investment portfolios. Is it any wonder why so many millennials are disenchanted by the life that they received, instead of the one that they were promised by their parents, teachers, and guidance counselors? Why is it that the millennial generation is the one that failed to launch? So, in my opinion, it's less about it being a failure to launch than it is the fact that there's just not enough places to land. So, there's so many people in the millennial generation that did everything that society told them to do. But when you're cast out into the adult world, kind of at the foot of the Great Recession, you know, a lot of them were just put in this holding pattern without a place to land. Some just kind of doubled down on education while waiting for the economy to recover. And, for some sectors, it just never did. And then they ended up being worse off than they had just been if they had went straight to McDonald's looking for a job after high school. At least they would have been debt-free. But I digress. Being a millennial does have its perks. At least we're less fucked than the Zoomers are. But sometimes being a millennial goes horribly wrong, with tragic and dire consequences. In an age where young men who are hopelessly bad at life, disenchanted by being thrust into a separate world from the one that they were promised, lash out violently by shooting up a school or some other public venue, wanting others to feel that very same pain that they've been bottling up for decades. One man, who, by his own words, was just a broken guy, decided to buck that trend entirely and opted not to become just another chicken shit mass shooter, but realized in his darkest hour that the world was now his oyster and exchanged the remainder of his life of wage slavery for a small taste of his wildest dreams, barrel rolling through the sky, and subsequently through the hearts of millions of onlookers. This is the story of Richard Russell, aka Sky King. Sky King was born on September 19th, 1989, with the government name of Richard Russell. Little is out there about his personal life and his history, but what is known is that at the time of the incident, he was almost 29 years old and working as a ground service agent for Horizon Air at Seattle-Tacoma Airport in Seattle, Washington. So for more information, you can revisit episode 21, which involved this exact same airport. According to his online blog, he was born in Key West, Florida, before moving out to Wasilla, Alaska when he was 7 years old. According to the Seattle Times, he played football and competed in track and field at Wasilla High School in Alaska and graduated in 2008. He then moved to Coos Bay, Oregon, where he attended Southwestern Community College and met a young lady by the name of Hannah Strassner at a church gathering in 2010. Just a year later, the two would marry and open a bakery that they ran together for the next 3 years. The two were described as having different personalities. The Coos Bay World, which is a local newspaper, described Hannah as being detail-oriented, while Richard was more willing to experiment and try new things. So back to the information from the Seattle Times. They reported that the two moved to Sumner, Washington in 2015 in order to be closer to Hannah's family, and soon after, Richard got a ground service job with Horizon Air. Russell was part of a two-person tow team which turned airplanes around. So, for those of you who don't know, airplanes can't go in reverse, despite what GTA San Andreas lets you do. And so in order to turn them around, you've got to get these tow guys out there to tow the aircraft out and then turn them around. If you fly a lot, you'll see these guys outside the window before your plane gets towed away from the gate. So by accounts, he was part of one of these tow teams and would be left inside the cockpit for certain stretches of time that ranged anywhere from about 10 minutes to 45 minutes at a time, but never to actually taxi the aircraft or operate it as a pilot would. He would just be there to activate the auxiliary power units and communicate with air traffic controllers. So keep this in mind as we move forward in the story, because it's kind of important. On his online blog, he wrote, quote, "I never thought I would work as a ground service agent. It seemed like such miserable work, and I never could imagine why anyone would want to subject themselves to all the constant noise, gas fumes, and heavy lifting. I would like to dedicate this blog to the life of a ramper and highlight the remarkable contrast between our work and rest." End quote. However, despite all this, it seems that Russell stuck with the job because of the unique perks it afforded him and his family, particularly the travel benefits, which allowed for free air travel, which he used to take a trip to France and his hometown in Alaska. So I'd like to just roll a quick clip here of Russell interviewing some of his coworkers about the job for one of his school projects. So here's Russell and some of his coworkers. Davis, pull that up.
Do you like working as a ground service agent? Why or why not?
I do and I don't. The work here is very easy. It's not that hard. One of the good things about working here is there's good people that work here, and one of the bad things about working here is there's really bad people that work here that are not good workers.
I enjoy that it's a physical job with a lot of different opportunity, a lot of different tasks you can partake in. I enjoy the flexibility of the schedule and the flight benefits. I do not enjoy management.
Agreed. What was one of your best travel experiences using your flight benefits?
The most fun I've had is taking my son to Disneyland.
Well, I used the flight benefits to travel to Korea, where I met a friend who was teaching English, and spent a week and a half hanging out in Korea with him and getting to know Korean people and understand Korean culture and eat a lot of Korean food.
Awesome, thank you.
And we're back. So I'd like to just note here that he had some personal videos that were once on YouTube, but they've since been taken down. And for the life of me, I can't find any reposts of them. But there's probably some other creators who have covered this story who have used them. So from my memory, though, he seemed like a really cool, down-to-earth kind of guy who kind of took his shitty job and working conditions in stride. And he had kind of a good sense of humor about the whole thing. At least outwardly he did. He's definitely a guy a lot of people can relate to and sympathize with. Very likable, for lack of a better word. According to Time magazine, Russell was active in his local community, serving as a leader at Young Life, which is a Christian youth ministry. Russell was well known around his workplace as an avid reader, a guy who would be reading books in whatever downtime he had. Brandon Brown, former co-worker of Russell, said, quote, "Every time he'd come into work, he'd always have a stack full of books. He was the nicest guy. Sometimes you can work at places and some of the people there, you'd think something was a little off with them. I never in a million years thought that about him." End quote. So here's where things get a little bit interesting because I couldn't really believe this when I read it, but apparently Seattle-Tacoma was the first city in the nation to raise its minimum wage to $15 an hour back in 2014. But apparently for whatever reason, through some kind of loophole that I don't know how to fully explain, airline employees were exempt from this law. So the ground service agents who are out there on the tarmac busting their ass to make sure that the planes were ready to leave on time, and safely might I add, were only making $12 an hour. So the fucking McDonald's cashiers on the inside of the airport were making $3 an hour more than the people that were making sure that airplanes full of people were operating safely and on time. I mean, there's nothing wrong with McDonald's employees, but I'm just saying, it boggles the fucking mind. But needless to say, the Horizon Air employees were pretty butthurt about it. Brandon Brown went on to say, quote, "It didn't sit well with people. You had people working in the restaurants. Everybody else at the airport made $15, end quote. So basically, Russell was part of this sect of airport employees that got treated like shit. They were overworked and arguably criminally underpaid with, a high amount of stress and a high amount of responsibility. And it's really no wonder that this position apparently has like an extremely high turnover rate. And to be doing this for several years straight, it seemed like being trapped in purgatory. I mean, even for me, Sears felt like being trapped in purgatory, but at least I got paid minimum wage. So that in a nutshell is a brief overview of what is known about Richard Beebo, as he was known to his friends and family, Russell. So let's get to the main event here. On August 10th, 2018, which was a Friday, Richard Russell arrived to work his shift at SeaTac Airport around 2:30 p.m. In surveillance footage released not too long ago, in 2022, he was seen going through airport security wearing a t-shirt that said, "The sky's no limit" on it. So to me, it's definitely kind of another cheeky thing that he did, and it makes sense why the authorities probably didn't release the footage early on, as to not give him any more attention or fame or adoration, that kind of thing. So he then headed into a restricted area for baggage handlers, and then he began his workday as normal. But sometime after 7 p.m., Russell would make his now infamous move. Using a tow vehicle, he towed out a Horizon Air de Havilland Q400 aircraft, registration number November 449er Quebec X-ray, which was a twin-engine turboprop plane, out from a maintenance area, started up the engines and began taxiing his way over to the north end of the airport toward runway 16 center. At about 7:30, an air traffic controller noticed the Horizon Air aircraft lining up on the runway. Quote, aircraft on Charlie lining up on runway 16C, say your call sign, end quote, but received no response. And then, confusion turned into sheer terror as multiple pilots and air traffic controllers were shocked and horrified by what they saw. The Horizon Air Q400 began screaming down the runway at full throttle, smoke billowing out of the landing gear, as Richard was apparently unaware that the parking brakes were on. And then, as the wheels left the ground and the gear went up, he was Richard no more, his government name a thing of the past. Henceforth from this moment on, he was Sky King. So I do want to play some highlights from his radio transmissions here. So the following is about 4 minutes and 52 seconds long. So if you've heard all of this before, you can skip past it if you want. But if you've never heard any of the audio of the incident, I think it's well worth listening to. So these are just some of the select highlights, but the full audio is over an hour long, and I'm going to link it down in the episode description under the sources as a YouTube link at the bottom. So check that out if you got the patience. All right, Davis, roll the clip.
Found myself in a bit of a predicament. I'm in the air right now.
Did you just take off?
Yeah.
And you're not supposed to be on that aircraft?
No.
Just flying the plane around, you seem comfortable with that?
Oh, hell yeah, it's a blast, man. I played video games before, so I know what I'm doing a little bit.
Okay, and you can see all the terrain around you. You've got no issue with visibility or anything?
Nah, everything's peachy clean. Just did a little circle around Rainier. It's beautiful. I think I got some gas to go check out the Olympics. And, yeah. Up and get it to go. Did a couple hours, I guess. But, yeah, I wouldn't know how to land it. I wasn't really planning on landing it. Up a little bit.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Sorry, my mic came off. I threw up a little bit. Hold on. Shoot. Man, I'm sorry about this. I hope this doesn't ruin your day. I got a lot of people that care about me. And it's going to disappoint them to hear that I did this. I would like to apologize to each and every one of them. Just a broken guy. Got a few screws loose, I guess. Never really knew it until now. I'm down to 2,100. I started like 30-something. 100 pounds of fuel.
Rich, you said you're at 2,100 pounds of fuel left?
Yeah, I don't know what the burnout is like on takeoff, but yeah, it burned quite a bit faster than I expected.
Okay. There is the runway just off your right side in about a mile. Do you see that? That's McCord Field.
Oh man, those guys would rough me up if I tried landing there. I think I might mess something up there too. I wouldn't want to do that. Hopefully. Oh, they probably got anti-aircraft.
No, they don't have any of that stuff. We're just trying to find a place for you to land safely.
Yeah, not quite ready to bring it down just yet, but holy smokes, I gotta stop looking at the fuel because it's going down quick.
Okay, Rich, if you could you start a left-hand turn, and we'll take you down to the southeast, please.
This is probably like jail time for life, huh? I mean, I would hope it is for a guy like me.
And
okay, very good, thank you.
Right now he's just flying around, and he just needs some help controlling his aircraft.
Very good. Nah, I mean, I don't need that much help. I played some video games before. I would like to figure out how to get this cabin altitude. Like, I know where the box is. I would like to get some, make it pressurized or something, so I'm not so lightheaded. Anyway, minimum wage. We'll chalk it up to that. Maybe that'll grease the gears a little bit with the higher up. Maybe, yeah. Damn it, Andrew! People's lives are at stake here.
Now, Rich, don't say stuff like that.
Nah, I didn't tell you. I don't want to hear that one. I just want you to whisper sweet nothings into my ear. Hey, you think if I land this successfully, Alaska will give me a job as a pilot?
I think they would give you a job of doing anything if you could pull this off.
Yeah, right. Nah, I'm a white guy, eh?
If you wanted to land, probably the best bet is that runway just ahead and to your left. Again, that's McCord Field. If you wanted to try, that might be the best way to set up and see if you can land there. Or just like the pilot suggests, another option would be over Puget Sound into the water.
Dang, did you talk to McCord yet? Because I don't think I'd be happy with you telling me I could land like that, because I could mess some stuff up.
Well, Rich, I already talked to him, and just like me, what we want to see is you not get hurt or anybody else get hurt. So like I said, if you want to try to land, that's probably the best place to go.
Hey, I want the coordinates of that orca with the, the mama orca with the baby. I want to go see that guy.
Stay on the ground.
I'm going to land it, in a safe kind of manner. I think I'm going to try to do a barrel roll, and if that goes good, then I'll just go nose down and call it a night.
Despite the gravity of the situation and his life now having an official expiration date on it, Richard can be heard joking around with the air traffic controllers, asking him to whisper sweet nothings into his ear, and the fact that he doesn't really need any help flying it because he's played video games before. So I do want to say that I busted up laughing at some of the shit that he said, and it's really not a mystery why so many people love this guy and turned him into a folk hero. But over the course of about an hour and 15 minutes, Sky King, the man formerly known as Richard Russell, flew around the skies near the Seattle-Tacoma area, flying his Q400 like he stole it. Videos can be found on YouTube and various news sites of horrified onlookers filming Richard on their iPhones as he zoomed above their neighborhoods, being tailed by two F-15s launched by the Air National Guard to intercept him in his stolen aircraft.
What the hell?
Holy shit!
Oh my god. What is happening right now?
My phone, you got it?
Yes.
It's a fucking Alaska Airlines Q400. What the fuck is he doing over here? Dude,
yeah.
That's not cool. He's looking for somewhere to fucking land.
What is happening? What's going on?
I don't know. He should never be that low over here.
No.
That's an Alaska Airlines flight.
Holy crap. Where is he going?
Where?
A second there, because of the way it looked when he was going over the garage, it looked like
Where's he going?
crashing.
Go get the truck keys and get my wallet.
The most famous is the footage of him executing a perfect barrel roll in the large, lumbering aircraft amongst the backdrop of a beautiful orange sunset out over the Puget Sound, recovering the plane mere feet away from the surface of the ocean, as horrified witnesses looked on in sheer terror. This particular footage has become iconic of the incident, spawning countless numbers of memes and tribute pictures. So it is pretty amazing if you haven't seen the footage. I highly recommend that you do. Just words don't do it justice. It's just fucking amazing. The civilian pilot who was helping him over the radio, referred to as Captain Bill, had this to say after the maneuver.
All right, Rich, this is Captain Bill. Congratulations, you did that. Now let's try to land that airplane safely and not hurt anybody on the ground.
All right. Damn it. I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't want to. I was kind of hoping that was going to be it,
Even the F-15 pilots were impressed by Richard, And everyone from the FAA and the military, they're all trying to be as professional as they can and keeping their cool about this kind of outrageous situation. And it's pretty admirable that none of these people broke character the whole time. But shortly after this is when things took a turn for the worst, and it all came to a head. So I'd like to just play Sky King's last radio transmission.
After long, I feel like one of my engines is going out or something.
Okay, Rich, if you could, you just want to keep that plane right over the water, maybe keep the aircraft nice and low.
So he says that he feels like one of his engines are going out or something, and then just moments later, he smashes into the southern tip of Ketron Island, dying of quote-unquote multiple traumatic injuries, thanks FBI, in a fiery blaze of glory. So the wings were ripped from the fuselage, the trees were ripped apart as the aircraft made its impact, and a 2-acre fire was ignited. So just a note here, Ketron Island is like a sparsely populated island. It's just right off the coast of the mainland and in the southern part of the Puget Sound, and it's kind of near Tacoma. Fortunately, nobody else was killed or injured on the ground. The FBI concluded that although he flew in a side-slip manner, consistent with flying on only one engine, his final descent and crash on Ketron Island was intentional. In the years after 9/11 and all the paranoia that came in its wake, the FBI did not treat the case of Sky King as a hijacking since there were no other passengers or crew on board. Instead, they treated it as a theft, which is probably why this story kind of fell by the wayside so quickly, as more important news of the time kind of overshadowed it, mainly what the president was tweeting. FBI agent Matt Scott said, quote, "There was never really a clear-cut, definitive, this is why," end quote. According to Scott, Richard sent his wife a text while the incident was unfolding. Quote, "The gist of it is that he's telling her that she deserved better," end quote. So, as to the actual why, I stumbled upon an article in thestranger.com that was written by one of Russell's coworkers, and I want to read some excerpts from it because I think it sheds a ton of light on the why of the whole thing. So the article is titled, "I worked with Richard Russell at Horizon Air, and I understand why he did what he did." You can find the full version of this article in the source notes of this episode. So it begins as follows. "I was surprised to wake up last Saturday morning to the headlines. Not completely shocked, but surprised nonetheless. I was a ground service agent at Horizon Air for the better part of 2016, and I worked alongside Richard Beebo Russell. As ground service agents, we handled luggage, walked through planes for final inspection, and pushed them out onto the taxiway. We weren't close, barely acquaintances, which seems odd considering the tight quarters and the foxhole mentality that is required to work in these particular roles. But with the high turnover, if you follow Horizon Air jobs, you will know that they are always hiring that position for SeaTac. It's not that hard to imagine. Day-to-day survival on the ramp, the area between the terminal and the taxiway where passengers are loaded and unloaded, baggage is handled, planes fueled, etc., requires a lot of sacrifice to keep the planes moving. It would be difficult enough if the inadequate break room didn't always resemble a crowded, sweatbox college party, but without any drugs or alcohol and nobody having fun. Brought your lunch to save spending $10 buying a meal in the terminal? Sure hope it's still in the fridge when you get your lunch break. Nasty emails directed to anonymous lunch bandits were a common occurrence. There was a locker room, but not enough lockers for everyone. Think about how many layers are required to work in the weather in Seattle, and then think about where you might put your jacket, gloves, etc. when you don't need them without getting them stolen if you don't have a locker. These things aren't luxuries, they're a basic part of work life. If the environment itself isn't enough to persuade you that you're nothing more than a cog to the upper management and shareholders, there are plenty of other, even more exasperating reminders. You're making around $3 less per hour than anybody else at SeaTac, including other airline employees, restaurant employees, car rental employees, bus drivers, etc. Although there are benefits. Health insurance and stock options might be nice, but they don't pay the rent. However, A vast majority of the ground service agents are men under age 30, so insurance and stock options mean nothing to them. They become empty gestures from a management who knows you'll never use them and thus cost the company little. But that's only one part of the picture. To be clear, the people I worked with were dedicated, hardworking, safety conscious, attempting to be loyal, all of the things that are supposed to get you ahead in America. But the workers on the ground and our immediate supervisors could barely keep our heads above water. As a subsidiary of Alaska Air Group, Horizon Air is the proverbial red-headed stepchild. It's glaringly clear to everyone who works there that cost-cutting by the executive teams in order to keep the shareholders happy is the main goal, and Horizon is the first stop on the belt-tightening train. We, the lowest-level employees, knew that when the record quarterly earnings report came out, there wasn't going to be any trickle-down. When I worked for Horizon, we were cursing our low-wage fate in the break room, while Alaska was spending $2.5 billion acquiring Virgin America, gotta keep up with Delta, and then investing another $2.5 billion upgrading their turboprop airplane fleet to jets. Acquisitions and sexy new jets play well at the stockholder meeting. Increased labor costs do not. An important perk are monthly bonuses, which can range from $50 to $200 a month, depending on whether target numbers are hit. About halfway through my summer tenure at Horizon Air, we were informed that the bonus structure was being revamped. It now included delays caused by weather and air traffic control, circumstances completely out of our control. This was described as, quote, more realistic to the situation on the ground, end quote. It was more like a morale murderer. This is all to say that I can understand what could drive a normal person to do what Richard Russell did. He saw his chance for relevance, to be simply acknowledged as an individual human being, and grabbed it. I don't condone it, and wish it would have turned out with a spectacular landing that he could have walked away from as a folk hero to some, myself included. I'll leave the question of exactly how he did it to the investigators. Richard's situation was not unusual for what has morphed into a wage slave economy. The fact that he had access to a plane makes it sensational. There are plenty of people out there making not enough money, and they keep plugging along, not stealing multi-million-dollar aircraft and crashing them. But the next time you're at SeaTac, take the chance to look out at Horizon's gates from the main food court and marvel at the controlled chaos on the ground. Off to your left, you'll see the baggage tug speeding to and from the catacombs under the terminal. Farther out, Delta planes lurk, large. And when you step onto the stairway of your next flight, holding that Big Mac you bought in the terminal because otherwise there's no reasonably priced food on the plane, customers are now just numbers too, remember that the person who flipped your burger is probably making $3 an hour more than the person who handles your luggage, walks around the plane doing final inspections, and ultimately pushes the plane full of 76 souls, as we used to say, out to the overcrowded taxiway to send you off safely. Your life depends on the work they do. End of article. So with that all said, let's conclude our story here. Richard Russell's memory has continued to be kept alive in the following years through countless internet memes, and his story has resonated with people who not only sympathize with the troubled young man, but can see at least a little bit of themselves in him. He's referred to now by the moniker Sky King, and whether you've been mistreated in a job, felt left behind in life, or left out by society, we've all got a little Sky King in us. Some of us more than others. His story unfolded before millions of eyes and caused more grown men to break down in tears than that one Sarah McLachlan ASPCA commercial from about 10 years ago, becoming a folk hero for wages and disenchanted young men and women all over the globe. Despite all of this, others consider him to be a villain, a man who selfishly stole somebody else's airplane for the purpose of a suicidal joyride. And not only that, put countless numbers of other people's lives in jeopardy while doing so, when he could have just chosen the Smith & Wesson retirement plan instead. Alright guys, since this one's not a huge mystery, and I've got no co-host to talk things out with, I'm going to just give a little bit of my own thoughts, fireside chat style. So, Sky King, hero or villain? All right, so to me, the story is romantic in a way. A guy decides that he's going to leave this world on his own terms. But before he goes, he decides to sacrifice what's left of his life to get a taste of his wildest dreams. The mystery here, though, why he did what he did, it's really not much of a mystery to me. I mean, he was stuck in a dead-end job, and then through a legal loophole, he was being paid less than a minimum wage for all of that hard work. It's like his coworker said in the article, it's wage slavery. Life just didn't work out the way he thought it would, and then despite his positive outlook and seemingly good sense of humor about his situation, that kind of state of mind it's just not sustainable over the long term, especially when you're in this shitty situation. And he just had a mental break, right? And then, as to how he knew how to fly the aircraft, I've mentioned this on a previous episode, but when I was a teenager, I learned how to fly Cessnas around, so I can shed a little bit of light on this. Much like Richard, I was also trying to go into the military as an officer and fly for them. I did the ROTC thing in college. It didn't work. It didn't end up working out for me. But anyway, what I can say about it is that if you have any concept of how an airplane is supposed to fly, if you're familiar with what the rudder pedals do, the throttle, how to start the plane, the yoke, all of these things, most of us who grew up playing video games will at the bare minimum be vaguely familiar with it all. It's enough to get the plane up off the ground, and taking off and flying it around is the easiest part of flying. The hard part is landing and navigating and all the other FAA rules and red tape that's involved with being a good pilot. None of that is shit that Richard would have cared to know or even really needed to know for what he was planning on doing. The one thing that I was impressed with was his ability to communicate over the radio to air traffic control. But again, it was part of his job to know how to work the radio on the aircraft as a ground service agent. These radios, they're not like your car radio. You don't just go put a headset on and you just magically are able to communicate with the tower and other aircraft. You've got to know the right frequencies. And if you didn't have that knowledge and experience, we wouldn't have been blessed with these audio recordings of him fucking around with the guys in the tower. I do want to say, though, that I concede that the guy is somewhat of an inspiration, but I do want to let some of the air out of the bubble and take you guys back down to earth for a moment, because what he did wasn't just dangerous for himself. He could have easily, and I mean easily, smashed into an airliner that happened to be taxiing onto the runway that he was using, or just crossing the runway on their way back to the gate. This could have ended up horribly for hundreds of people because of this dipshit move that he did. Another thing is that if the trim tab of the aircraft was all the way down and he had no idea what a trim tab was, he might not have been able to even lift the aircraft up into the air enough, and he would have just went off the end of the runway and killed somebody at the end of the airport. And then, not to mention, he destroyed a perfectly good airplane. And it's not like these things just respawn like a video game. It still takes time, labor, money, all of that shit to make a brand new airplane. Not to mention the island that he crashed into. It wasn't uninhabited. It was just not inhabited densely. So he got extremely lucky that he was the only person that lost his life. If he took somebody else with him by accident, which he could have easily done, it's only by the grace of God that he didn't, honestly. I think that we as in the general public, we would be looking at him in a much different light than we do. So anyway, I guess I'm just going to give my final thoughts here. Kind of like in the style that Jerry Springer used to do, So I would say my Jerry's final thoughts would be, if you're stuck in a similar situation that Richard was in, don't do something as reckless and dumb as he did. You know, if you're stuck in life and you feel that you've got no way out of your situation, I'd say that, yeah, you know, the world is now your oyster, but don't use that opportunity to fucking kill yourself. Just shuffle the deck, you know? If you can't move forward in life, make a left turn instead. You know, I did it, and it worked out for me in ways that I couldn't have ever imagined. You know, take risks, especially when you're young. You don't have to do what everybody else is doing around you. You know, you don't have to do these dumbass TikTok dance videos or sell pictures of your butthole on OnlyFans. Go to another country, go join the military, you know, read books, go volunteer for the Peace Corps, go teach English in a village in Africa, start a podcast like I did. It doesn't really matter what you do as long as it's something that you can find meaning in, because finding meaning in this brave new world, it's so fucking hard, but it's not impossible. Don't throw your life away. And I'm not talking just about killing yourself. I'm also talking about everything else that's self-sabotaging. You know, don't get into drugs. Don't sell your soul for money. Don't work for a job for a boss that you hate. I mean, yada, yada. The list goes on and on. And even if all else fails, the Smith & Wesson retirement plan is still waiting for you. So fuck it, you know, just go wild. Just don't hurt anyone else or destroy anyone else's property. Well, that's about all I got. Davis, why don't you help sign me out of here?
Like sands through the hourglass, so too are the minutes of our podcast. But don't fret, dear listener. We'll be back again to breathe new life into an old mystery next time.
Remember, folks, the truth is out there, somewhere in the ether, and through our powers combined, we'll solve that sumbitch once and for all.
This is Super Mystery Bros.